Without further ado, we'll start our presentation this evening. So remember, as Clark is going through, go ahead and type your questions in the chat. Keep yourself muted, and we will do a round of Q&A once Clark wraps up. So our first presenter is Clark Niewendorp. Clark is a 20-year resident of Oregon and retired geologist. Congratulations. His educational background includes a Bachelor of Science in Geology from Southeast Missouri State and a Master's in Geology from Western Michigan University, which is actually where I got my undergrad degree. So that's a crazy coincidence. Go Broncos. In 1980, he started his career as a mine geologist and since worked in the Kentucky, Tennessee oil fields, environmental consulting, and 10 years with the South Carolina Geological Survey. In 1999, he brought his family to Oregon, where he retired in 2018 after 19 years with the Oregon Department of Geology and Mineral Industries. Their acronym is DOGAMI. So let's welcome Clark to present about geology of the Western Cascades.
Okay, thanks, Liz. So I'll start sharing my screen and we will start. And we'll move, swap there. And I think, Liz, we can see this, right?
Yep, looks great.
Well, let's start. Well, thank you. And I really want to thank the Clackamas River Basin Council for the sponsoring this conference or hosting this conference and your 25th anniversary. And I want to really give out a shout out to David Bugney. David's the one that started organizing these seminars and webinars, and he, along with a group of a steering committee, has put together all the presentations that are going to come along in this year. So my hat's off to David. It's a lot of work. Thank you, Liz, for hosting and being my Zoom host. And yeah, go Broncos. Okay, so with that said, the next two talks are going to kind of wrap up the geologic topics for the webinar. And the next one is on geologic hazards, landslides, earthquakes, and that. And then it's followed by soils. And of course, I'm biased a little bit. You got to have the rocks to have the soils. So we're going to talk about that today. I'm going to have a caveat here first, though. There's so much to see in the basin, and there's so little time to talk about it. So please forgive me, but I can't show all the waterfalls and explain the rocks there. So it's going to be pretty restricted to pretty much what you can see fairly easy from your car. And some stops you can sit there and get out, and other stops we just have to kind of drive by and slow down a little bit. So with that, I would like to really thank my sponsor and thank GSOC for agreeing to be a bronze sponsor. On your screen, you can see their website, and I encourage you to all check it out. And if you would really like to, consider joining and being a member. Right now, I'm serving as their president, and I'm deeply honored to do that. So let's get started. So this is the Clackamas River Basin, and it's outlined in black here, where my cursor rests. The basin itself can be divided in, really, if you're talking about it, there's two physiographic provinces, and one of those physiographic provinces has subdivisions. So here we have the Willamette Valley up here into the northwest. In the center is the Western Cascades, and it's a deeply eroded volcanic landscape. It's older. And then we have the High Cascades up here to the east, and they are glaciated, younger volcanic terrain. And for the talk, I'm going to kind of subdivide the topics into the geology of the lower basin and the geology of the upper basin. There's a if you agree, there's a kind of a convenient divide there to do that. So the next slide, and I'm sorry I have to do this. This is the geologist lingo coming out on me. I have to show you stratigraphic sections. So on the right here, you can see this I call them, a stacked representation of the rocks that you will see, and they're stacked according to age. The oldest is on the bottom and the youngest is on top. To the left, you see another version of a stratigraphic way to show rocks with their time distribution, and it goes from left to right, or right to left. I'm sorry, I get mine together. From oldest to youngest, and from the bottom oldest to the youngest. And all of the rocks that are present or in both of the basins are shown in this left-hand graph. You can notice here that there are two units here, high cascades and the glacial deposits, that are not present in the lower basin. So let's take a little bit a minute, and I'll go through this quickly. So I've color-coded the slides, the geology in the following slides. Red is going to be for Columbia River Basalt Group, that's CRBG. And in particular, in the lower basin, we have the basalt of Sand Hollow. And so that's just kind of a little detail. Above that, stratigraphic above that, is the Western Cascade volcanics. And there are two formations there, the sardine and the overlying rhododendron. And I will give you another bit, kind of a caveat here. Different geologists have used these two formations to describe geology throughout the basin. And I will use, whenever I'm at a location, I will use the best available geology to tell you what the formations are. And in one case, it could be sardine. In the other case, it could be rhododendron. So that's my little caveat for that. Above that is the ancient river rocks. And I combined three formations into that unit. And that's the Sandy River Mudstone is the oldest one. On top of it is the Troutdale Formation, and Springwater Formation overlies all of them. The boring lavas are on top of them, on top of the ancient river rocks. And then we have the Clackamas River terraces. There's three terraces along the Clackamas River. There's from oldest to youngest, it's the upper, middle, and lower terrace. Kind of is counterintuitive if you just kind of look at that. Then we have the introduction of the Missoula flood deposits, and there are two kinds. There's a fine grain and a coarse grain sediments. And then lastly, there is a landslide deposits and debris flow fan deposits. So let's go and take a look at the distribution of the units that we just talked about. So here we've got a map of the lower basin. Up here at Gladstone, we have this red area, which is again the CRB, the Columbia River Basalt Group, and it's the Sand Hollow. And down here in the right-hand corner, the southeast corner, is the Western Cascade volcanics, and this called rhododendron here. Others have called it sardine. So I guess I'm hedging my bet here on what to call it. Again, these are Miocene age. You can see the age range on the screen, and you can follow this blue circles in the next slides as we climb up the stratigraphic section to give you an idea of the age of the rock units. And I just wanted to, before I go, show you. You kind of get the false sense that there's only just a little bit of bedrock over here near Gladstone, and the same kind of feeling or look that you get down here in the southeast corner. Actually, we have the basalts, the Columbia River basalts covers the entire area, and don't get too caught up in whether this is later Grand Ronde, early wampum basalts. We'll talk about that, but this is not quite how, we're not going to get into the weeds or the details about which basalt we're looking at. But it does show you, or gives you the sense that the Columbia River basalts kind of cover the entire area, Portland area and beyond. The dashed line here is kind of my inferred extent of the rhododendron formation, as at least in the subsurface. It could extend farther into the valley in subsurface. Next, we have the ancient river rock, and this is its distribution. It's in this light orange, and it is made up, again, it's made up of those three different formations. They are the sandy river mudstones that drop down in the spring water formation. And this little schematic diagram tends to give you an idea of its distribution. So there's two sources that contributed sediments to this ancient river rocks. This is the Clackamas River where my cursor is. It tended to provide sediments to the southern, down to the south, while the ancient ancestral Columbia River provided materials north of this line. I want you to understand that this line moves back and forth over time. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that the sediments were all contributed from the ancestral Columbia River here, and just down to the south, it was all Clackamas River. It moves back and forth. Next, we have on top of that, we have the boring lavas. These lavas are named for a set of volcanoes up near Boring or Boring Hills, and it's just, this name is stuck with it. They're really called, or if you were going to get technical, these are really quaternary lavas, and quaternary is this system right through here. The distribution of these lavas, as you can see in this new figure here, this new illustration here, kind of covers quite a large area even up into Washington, just a little bit past Vancouver. So there's about 90 different volcanoes or volcanic vents that supplied these younger or erupted these younger lavas. And I also point out that this is not boring lava. This is actually quaternary lavas related to the high cascades. You can see their ages here, anywhere from 3 million to less than 0.5, 500,000 years. And over here, you can see that they're Pliocene to Pleistocene. Next are the Missoula flood deposits, and they are restricted mainly along this area along the Willamette River. I'm going to tell you here that I do not have a stop for Missoula flood deposits. There really isn't any good exposures, but what we'll have to use is this map. It's from Burns and Cole, and they show in blue the inundation extent of the Missoula flood waters. Right, this light blue is the present or the modern flood plain for the Clackamas River, and that is right through here. Gladstone is there. This gold line is the 400-foot elevation level, and what's that mean? Well, we'll see that here in a minute. But again, these are from 15,000 to a little under 13,000 years old, and probably 40. There's likely 40 of them, but I've even read some articles where they're saying there's 120 of them. So it's kind of picture poison as to how many. However, if you're caught in the flood, this is what it might have looked like. So this is a Photoshop kind of looking at the Portland area, and Sheila in her last talk showed this top left photograph, and I've labeled some buildings for you. So the Coin Tower is here, And we're probably in a rowboat on top of the lake somewhere over the convention center in the southeast corner or the lower right-hand corner. The Photoshop photo at below to the right, to the bottom right, kind of, if you pretend like you're on the West Hills and looking towards Mount Hood, you're looking over Mount Tabor, Mount Kelly, and Powell Butte. So that gives you an idea. And these are large rafts of ice, and the dark areas are meant to represent erratics that are floating into the valley. And now we're kind of taking in the geomorphologists like this quite a bit, is that now we're going to talk about the Clackamas River terraces. And there's 3 of them. And you can see different, they're represented by different colors. The yellow is the floodplain for the Clackamas River today. And the colors represent, starting with the light green, that's the lower terrace. The green here is middle terrace, and the darker green is the upper terrace. And they represent remnants of old abandoned floodplains. And the oldest terrace here is a little over 22,000 years old. So here, I forgot to do this. So we'll put that on there just to label them for you and give you an idea of what I was talking about. Next and last but not least is the landslide deposits and debris flow deposits. And the landslides are the dark gray, and the light gray or the lighter gray are the debris flow fan deposits. But I want you to notice the relationship here. You see that the concentrations, the heavy concentrations of landslides are right on the edge of the ancient river rocks. And that's because those rocks are susceptible to slumping and sliding. And so you're seeing why it is related to, they're related to the geology here in the valley. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. So we've got the geology laid out and established for us. Now let's look at the faults. And I'm not going to talk a lot about the faults in this talk, in this session, because the next session will cover a little bit of this, should cover a little bit of this stuff. So these are the faults that have been mapped in the lower basin. They're all active. They are, there are 3 named faults here: the Bolton, the Oakfield, and the Portland Hills fault. All of them are right lateral strike slip faults. And what I mean by that is this diagram shows that this ground, this block has moved relative to the block behind it in a right lateral motion. In other words, you start here at this tip, go to the fault, and to find the tip of the other block or the motion of the other block, you have to turn right, and then you walk up to it. And it works going the both ways. They probably controlled the boring lavas to a large degree, because they were at pathways to the subsurface, and they've been active for 15 million years or so. And today, I do not have a epicenter map to show you, but there has been a few earthquakes in the lower basin over the years. Okay, now we're going to do this again for the upper basin. So we're going to move now to the geology there. We've added the Little Butte Formation down here. And the Little Butte Formation is the oldest, the Oligocene through the Middle Miocene. And we've added another group of basalts in the CRBs. Remember, that's the Columbia River Basalt Group. And that's the Frenchman Springs, which overlies the Grand Ronde basalt. Like here again, we have the Western Cascade Volcanics, and it is, has rhododendron formation that overlies the Sardine Formation. The High Cascades, remember those, that's the young volcanics or young lavas, glaciated young lavas. We still see the boring lavas in the upper basin. Oh, we've got glacial deposits here now. Yeah. And then, of course, we can never get away from the landslide debris flow deposits in Oregon. Again, you can, as you followed along, I hope you kind of looked at this chart to get a kind of an idea of the dates that we're talking about as we go through the next series of slides. So this slide shows you the distribution of the Little Butte Formation. Right now, it's fairly scattered, and there's reasons for that, and you'll see as we go along that there's also an element here too of very low resolution mapping. It's very difficult to map in this terrain. It's brutal, and for old fat men like myself, I mean, it kills us. You got to have a young graduate student that crawls around in there to sort things out. Again, we have the introduction. We have the Western Cascade volcanics that are over this, which is the rhododendron, the sardine rhododendron, and I've also included here the Columbia River basalt group just to save time. The distribution of the high cascades are over here on the right side of your screen. The line here is just an arbitrary line to show you the boundaries begin, but we do have a little bit of younger basalts, quaternary basalts over here that you know, kind of fall outside this line. And then it's harder to see here. I didn't pick very good colors, but inside these brown circles are the extent of the glacial deposits, and they're not. This is the alpine mountain variety of glaciers, not the sheet glaciers. Sheet glaciers spread from all different sides outwards, and those were that's the kind of glacier that, well, was the dammed up the floodwaters, and then the Missoula floodwater, then they came down, and that's what deposited the Missoula flood deposits. These are valley filled, they fill valleys, and you can see that they kind of conform to the topography as you follow this up here. Just for reference, this is Mount Jefferson off here to the bottom of the screen, and these glaciers here in this area are related to it. And then we have the landslide deposits that you see filling in quite a bit of area in through the Western Cascades volcanic area. And it does that because the Little Buttes volcanics are susceptible to landslides because they're mostly volcaniclastic. And now that's a word that I'll define here. That means that, you know, by definition, 10% of the sediments or the fragments and so forth are volcanically derived. In these cases, there's quite a bit more in there. And these are also the pyroclastic tuffs and other brushes and stuff that were ejected from these volcanoes, these older volcanoes in here. So yes, we have faults again in the upper part. Again, these are probably all active, at least some of them are. They are all aligned. If you remember, the faults, most of them were northwest trending in the lower basin. They're northwest trending in the upper basin, and this is the outline of the Clackamas Basin here. And then you can see that there's northwest trending faults as we go down south to the south central part of Oregon, the Sisters Fault Zone, and even the Brothers Fault Zone that goes all the way out here to Burns. What I'm just trying to show you is that there is a pretty large regional system that cuts through the middle or the heart of the longitudinal heart of the Clackamas River Basin, and it's actually called the Portland Hills Clackamas River structural fault or structural alignment. It depends on which reference you look at. Again, so here just for references, Mount Hood, Mount Jefferson, and the South Sisters. All right, well, so that's kind of a really quick, very basic and generalized view of the geology and the structure in the Clackamas River Basin. So now let's go and kind of get in our cars and go on a field trip. So one of the things I was kind of asked to do was, you know, just don't sit here and lecture about the geology. actually show some areas that you can go out within the basin and kind of look at things and enjoy a nice day out. So in the lower basins, there are 7 spots that you can get to easily by road, or you can sit up on top of a bluff or look out and look at an area. So we're going to start here at High Rocks State Park, or High Rocks County Park over here. And this is, and we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way down to Milo MacGyver State Park down here to in the southern part. Again, I want to remind you, we're going up the river on this, or up the basin. So at High Rocks, we imagine all of us have heard about that. There's no sun. There isn't any kind of a lot of people there swimming this time of year. So this photograph is taken in January. So what I'm showing you here is that the river has cut through I always call these flat rocks, or actually this is the bedrock, and cut through some kind of fracture system or zone, but found a way to cut through, and it has exposed columns over here that you can see pretty well, and they're blocky. As you can see, you've got stuff that fractures are cutting through here. Over here, you can even see crude outlines of hexagonal blocks, or tops of the blocks. And I've got a little diagram up here that kind of shows you what a typical flow might look like, a flow that's part of the Columbia River basalt group. So I think we're probably somewhere in this lower colonnade, or we're in this columnar section, or in these columns down through here. Probably somewhere where my cursor is kind of wiggling a little bit. Now, there's something going on up here. So when you get down on this and you want to walk to the end or up here towards the freeway, all of a sudden the rocks just dive off, and it looks like somebody just took a kind of a knife and cut it off right here. I think this is, or I personally would map this as a fault zone, or part of a fault zone, and others have mapped the Oakfield fault zone coming through here or close by. So this is an indication when you're out there, if you see hard lines like this, it's sort of a clue that you're going to see some kind of fault, an indication of some kind of fault. Well, from there, let's go and get in the car and kind of move on to the other side of the interstate. It was kind of going to be close to by Oregon City, but we're going to go up to Forsyth Road and Front Road. You can see the map over here shows you a little bit as we kind of look here a little bit out where it is. I will tell you that this is a exposure of Troutdale, probably of its fine-grained silt sandstone in this one, but it is probably Lithia Subaru's new car lot. So you're going to trespass if you go up and take a look at this close up. So you can stand at the edge of the road and see this. And what I see here is a well-bedded sandstone, siltstone. And I also see another kind of structure in here that gives me a clue that this was laid down by water. And that is right here in this box that came up. This is a cross bed, and you can see that through my right here, these are well-bedded alternating layers of sandstone and siltstone, and then it's cut off with another bed, or cut off by the effects of the water, and then deposit over that. We've got a bed in different orientations. So imagine this kind of as a pretty there was a pretty good current running through here that kind of ripped this up. The Troutdale also has these gravels in them, and this is a stop that we can't get to. Well, you'll pass by on 224 as you go towards Barton. It's about 1 mile east of it. But you can see these nice cobbles and small gravels and cobbles. These are cobble size here of these gravels. These gravels have a quartzite in them, which is it's quartz, it's metamorphosed sandstone that's been metamorphosed, and now it's been their source has been placed somewhere in eastern Washington, and they've traveled down the ancestral Columbia River. Remember, I said that line between what the Clackamas River deposited and what the ancestral Columbia River kind of moved back and forth, and this is probably a good indication here that it did. All right, well, so we're on our way. We're on 224. We're gonna go now, and we're gonna go up and look at Scooter Mountain, and we've kind of changed from this ancient river rock. Now we're gonna look at volcanic rocks, and we're gonna look at the boring lavas. So this right now, what you're seeing is we're gonna drive up here on between Happy Valley and Rock Creek, and we're gonna look out there, and you're gonna you can see it, but I mean this does it in much better detail. This is a perspective view using a LiDAR that you can download and use from Dagami's website, and they do have a viewer that you can see this. But this is a cone, a volcanic cone, part of which is left. And around here, you can see that there's remnants or even suggestions of different lava flows, or the flows that came that were issued from this cone. So now that we're on these boring volcanics, let's just now travel to the south, and we're going to go down get back on 224. We're going to head to Barton, but we're going to stop here at Madron Wall Park. I didn't know this existed. In fact, when I was working at Dagami, I'd get calls about where can you go climbing. So this was a surprise to me and a delightful one. And so this park used to be an old quarry. So this is a reuse of a quarry. What was mined here was they called the basaltic andesite of hardscrabble. Yeah. So just so you know, just like a little trivia here. It is right here, and I have this map here right now because I wanted to demonstrate again that there are different ages for these boring lavas. The oldest one down here, and then we have younger lavas, boring lavas around it. One we're looking at is approximately 600,000 years old, and the rest of them here you can see their ages from the if you compare it to the chart. So if you go into Madron Wall Park, it costs you $6 to park. You can see from the parking lot a nice wall of this hardscrabble basaltic andesite here. You can even make out columns, and this is what they're climbing on. You can climb up several different trails up to the rock face, and you can get a close look at it. There's no climbers when we were here at this time of day, but that's a pretty neat place. And if you really want to collect some boring lava, there you go. You've got plenty of it to look at. I will mention now that this slope right here that's underneath here, and the parking lot is built on a landslide. And the reason that is because, well, I'll say the reason here that there's a landslide here, and this happens to be just a couple, just maybe a half a mile farther down 224, is because the boring lava are sitting on top of that very susceptible layer of Troutdale ancient river rock. And we can see here a landslide that has moved recently. But this other map right here to your right kind of gives you an idea of its distribution, a little bit closer look at it. So again, the black it represents landslides, while this gray area is the debris flow fans deposits. Again, and like here, gives you a good idea that the Troutdale, wherever it is exposed, and particularly when it's exposed underneath the boring lavas, is susceptible to sliding. And in this area right here, where we're going to look next, is a close-up view of the slide. And this again is another LiDAR perspective, 3D perspective. This colored is a cap. This colored area here is the hard gravel cap. Underneath it are the Troutdale, and you can see the headscarps for the landslide where my cursor is moved. Also other headscarps, internal headscarps, and this characteristic hummocky type topography. So this landslide is spilled over the road at one time and into the floodplain of the Clackamas River. So from here, we're going to move over close to Barton, and we're going to look at remember these terraces. And this where we talked about the 3 terraces before. Now this area is called the River Island Reach. And what I'm going to show you here is that if we stand up here at this pinhead and we look out to the south, upriver, okay? Because remember, we're looking upriver or up the basin. We're going to look at the relationship between the light green, which is the lower terrace, the green, which is the middle terrace, and the darker green, which corresponds to the upper terrace. So here we go. Let me orient you here with this slide. This is a 3D perspective looking again up the river, going this way. So this is the floodplain of the Clackamas River, and that where my cursor rests is actually the river. And we're looking southwest. The upper inset here is a block diagram of the same thing that we're looking at here. So what we have here starting here is, and I've labeled them a little bit different, so we need to follow along. So this is the third floodplain, which is the lower terrace, the second floodplain, which is the middle terrace, and then the first and the oldest floodplain is the upper terrace. And this is down here, this is probably now the Sandy River mudstones, which they've been mapped here. Remember that? That was the oldest of the 3 that make up the ancient river rocks. Again, these terraces are all as a result of the downward erosion of the Clackamas River. This one happens to be over 22,000 years old, and this one is around 1,000 or a little around 1,100 years old, according to Wappler. From here, let's get back in our cars, and we're going to head to our last stop in the lower basin, and that's at Milo MacIver State Park. It's a really neat place, great place to go picnicking. It has a few geologic features that are very interesting, and so let's put a map over the geologic map over the top of that. But before I do, I want to kind of point out that this is the Estacada Rock Products. It's been here forever. Also we have the River Mill Reservoir right here in this area of the park. So if you put the geologic map on top of that, we have the middle terrace over here on our right side of our screen, or to the east. The lower terrace is in the middle. Oh, well, our middle terrace is missing here. We have the upper terrace, and then we have the ancient river rocks here that are all along the bluff. And this is probably the geologist changed again. So this whole area here, the Springwater Formation is on top. The Troutdale is through here, and this has been mapped as the Sandy River mudstones along the edge of the river here. Again, we have quite a few landslides and debris flow deposits here. We also have an interesting area here. As you run down to the Kingfisher Group Camp, you'll run over these inset terraces. So there's terraces in terraces in this park. There's another interesting feature here too, is if we go over to the River Mill Reservoir area, and what is not shown in this map, because it's the resolution of the mapping here, and Ma's mapping did not choose to show it, others do, is that there is bedrock along part of this, up to the boat ramp at least, and a little bit beyond, that the land, or I'm sorry, the reservoir is pinned to, and that is in this case, Whopper called this the Sardine Formation. As we move farther into the upper basin, something that looks awfully similar to that has been called rhododendron by other geologists. So we'll just leave it at that. But you can see here that the hydroelectric plant up here in the right-hand corner up here is built on a cemented matrix of clay, silt, and ash, and it contains any from pebbles, gravel, to angular blocks of volcanic material. You can see that here in this photograph here along the river, and this is below the dam, past the boat dock there, or the launch place. I'm not going to say anything more about that, but this is a pretty interesting example of the rhododendron here, and we're going to see that elsewhere as we go into the upper basin, I think. So let's go on a field trip now through the upper basin, and we're going to make 5 stops. And I'm apologize now because of the burnout along 224, I didn't get to go to some of these places I would like to photograph. So I've used other photographs to help me here. I'm also going to kind of say that I cannot stop at every really beautiful waterfall and explain the geology, or some of those really beautiful places that are stuck away in the canyons as we go into the upper basin. So I guess I'm kind of giving you another one of my hedges here. So our first stop is going to be at above the North Fork Reservoir. We're going to be at milepost 27, and the next slides are going to go from milepost 27 to milepost 28. So at the top of the hill on milepost 27, you can see where my pin is right there, and this is the reservoir right in through here. Is that we have an outcrop or a road cut that it shows 2 kinds of joints, and this has been mapped by Sharon as rhododendron, by the way. This has blocky, or what they call biscuit joints, and down on Faraday Road down through here, you can see some spectacular joints, biscuit joints stacked on each other. It looks like a baker stacked them all up and piled them up for you to look at. We also have platy joints right through here. You can see the crude columns through here. And then we have a bake zone, which is this yellow, or this red and white area here. So to me, it suggests that there's a flow. This flow came over the top and baked the ground, or baked the top of another flow right here. This could also be some kind of volcaniclastic sediments. Remember that word? Again, these are volcaniclastics, are these sediments that have anywhere from 10% or greater volcanic material in it. If you go down the road a little bit, you'll come across this mudstone, this with what they call a breccia. These are angular blocks of andesite in here, and this is a matrix of mud. So this was a mud flow that flowed along a drainage area, kind of the type of mud flows that you see happening in the Andes when they have those horrific mud flows down there. You can even liken this to what happened at Mount St. Helens. Farther down, we get into this. I call this a mess. This is a inner canyon, what they call an inner canyon. So there's kind of defined limits here of coarse grained tuffs, altered flows. You even see one that here's got flares up into a flare type structure. At first glance, it really kind of reminds me of a dike, but so that's, getting down here so this can all be seen at milepost 28. After milepost 28, we're getting close to where 224 is now closed, and this is what you can see now. If we were able to go farther down 224, we would start to get into the first indications that there's Columbia River basalts. Now, the Columbia River basalts have been cut by the Clackamas River, and that's what you see in the canyon walls as you run down all the way down quite a ways down up the Clackamas River. So right here you have a well-defined fault that has dropped this ground right here 300 feet relative to this to the basalts that you can see, the cliffs that you start to see as you drive down here. We're going to go down here and look at two areas at mileposts 31 and 37. This is Big Cliffs right here, and then Big Eddies down a little bit farther south. So this is Big Cliffs, and we can see basically two kinds of flows. Within the Grand Ronde flow, there is at least a dozen, or yes, about a dozen or so flows. One of them is the Prineville flow. Then you can see these are also other flows that have been given labels either by their polar magnetic or by their geochemistry. And you can see here there's at least 6 or 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably some more of 6 different flows up here. All of them have been identified using their geochemical signature. I, for one, and not having had much experience in the Columbia River basalts, cannot identify them. I know of other geologists and worked with some who can, but so I relied when I mapped on geochemistry. So I'm making a big confession here. As we move farther to the next milepost down here with the Big Cliff, we see these tiered faults again, are full there we go. We move down to Big Eddy, and we can see the outline of these flows in here, but this is basically all the flows that make up, or the thickness of the Prineville flows here. You can see that they're jointed, and there's columns that you can start to make out in here. So what we have special going on here is we have the Lockerbie fault. That is a normal fault and is down dropped this block relative to the block here, or we have actually put side by side the Prineville flow with the Grand Ronde basalt and a Hackley one. So this is when you see this kind of geomorphology, and we kind of map on this a little bit. If you see these kind of saddles that between two different hilltops, you have to suspect that there's a fault going on there or some kind of structure. So as we move farther along, or up the river, we're going to get to milepost 43, and we're getting close to the bottom of the canyon. And we're going to see some interbeds exposed. This interbed is near the base of the Grand Ronde basalt, and the base of the Grand Ronde basalt sits on top of the older gosh, you know how do you the older Little Buttes Formation. There we go. Sorry for the brain slip. But these sedimentary beds are markers of time. And what I mean by that is that there was a time lapse between when the unit below it, the flow below it, entered and flowed into this area. There was a time lapse that allowed sediments to accumulate before the upper flow passed over the top of it. So that's what these interbeds represent. Now, when we get at the end of the canyon, and this is near 3 links, we start to get the base of the valley opens up. It is a pretty striking example. It just like the rocks are gone. And we start to get now into the Little Buttes Formation. And the Little Buttes Formation, this is the reason why the topography changes. Right now, we see in this other map off here, this geologic map here, that we have considerable amount of landslide deposits and that is the reason. The Little Buttes Formation is susceptible to landsliding because it is made up of altered volcanogenic rocks, and that means the same things as volcanic clastic rocks, but that's why you have it here. And we are now in the oldest rocks in the upper basin. We're going to go past that, and now I'm going to jump around a little bit. It's hard to see now different outcrops unless we get off into some of the Forest Service roads, and we can't do that. And we're starting to look at more views than we are outcrops as we do this. But if we go down and we catch the Oak Grove Fork Road, which is the road that goes to Lake Harriet, we can start to see, and that's Forest Service Road 57. We come up with a pretty interesting place over here. It's in this map right here, and what it is that we have the Grand Ronde basalt against the Frenchman Springs member, and that includes a lot of other different basalts in them. So we're not going to get too worried about trying to name a specific flow here, but you can see that there's a normal fault that runs through here, and this area right here has a couple interesting things to see. First of all, we start to see pillow basalts. There are other areas of pillow basalts in the up the canyon or along the canyon, particularly as we get off of the side roads. But here we have a pillow basalts and overlying a sedimentary interbed. But up here is what's kind of interesting, and what we're going to get into a little bit more as we go farther along in the road trip. Is this a fault? Has a zone, a large zone. Generally, faults are not one single hard line. They usually are comprised of more than one fault and have a zone between those faults that usually contain breccia or gouge or some kind of material that has been ground up by the movement of the fault. In this case, you can see that this area right here is dramatically different than what you see over here in this pillow basalt. And you also get a clue when you start to see this red ochre colored rock that something's going on, and that's one of the clues in here. This also is a area that is, if we kind of follow my pointer up here, this fault also is this outcrop is also above a mercury mine, which we're going to look at in a little bit here, down here along the road. Again, the mercury mine and is below the Harriet Lake right here. So we're going to get back on the road. We're going to start to go 224 kind of ends, or at least the road says it does, and we start to get on the Clackamas River Road, and that's National Forest Road 46. We are going, this is the Calawash River. We're going to go past that, and we're going to look at this sill of Austin Point. Again, we're in the old rocks. We're in the Little Butte Volcanics, and it also contains sills, flows, and other features. But you can see this rock really looks quite a bit different. It's light gray. It's a diorite. Now, so a diorite is a igneous rock. So this was an intrusive, not an extrusive rock. The basalts that we were in before were extrusive. So this is intrusive. So it was buried, magma. And right here, so that's another pretty interesting site. This particular area is a pretty interesting or popular with rock hounders, because there's a lot of crystals and other things you can find. Crystal, mostly zeolites, which is a hydrothermal mineral from the that fills cavities with those really pretty zeolitic minerals. And there's 12 of them there are 6 of them that are common, and some of them, and one of them is actually a hazard. But so you can find those here. we're going to now kind of get off the road a little bit and then talk about Earth resources in the basin. So I've got a map up here that shows you sort of what is the distribution of aggregate sites, industrial sites, metal sites, and hot springs. And this is all kind of on a very washed out land use map. So here we have the lower basin right through here, and then we have the upper basin up here. I can tell you right now, there will be no mining in either of these basins. And or if they do, they're going to have to spend an exorbitant amount of money to get their permits through. I can say that now. I used to not be able to say that when I was working. So the Willamette Valley will face an aggregate shortage in the future, for sure. There will be no mining here because there's too much sensitive ground. There's wilderness areas, but there is potential for other resources here. There will not likely be any kind of geothermal resources extracted from this area, again, for the same environmental issues that mining faces. But I want to tell you that right now there are probably 3 or 4 working aggregate sites. In the industrial minerals, they're basically gemstones, the zeolites, which I mentioned earlier. We do have 17 metal sites, which are mines, prospect, and occurrences. There's a gold mine right here. There are actually 2 of them that were former producers. There's still gold in them. I've been to those. These mines are part of the Opal Creek north of Santiam mining district. On the outskirts, the actual west or northeastern limits of the mining district. They're lead, copper, and zinc. We have mercury mines here that were producers, and up through here, these are all lateritic iron deposits. So when you see those red soils, those contain higher concentrations of iron, which were had been an interest for smelting and iron smelting for a while. So let's kind of look at where we can see some of these resources. So we're going to look here at the Austin Hot Springs and Bagby Hot Springs. They're there in yellow. And then we're going to go to the mercury mines up here in 3, where the head of the pushpin 3 is labeled. And down here is an interesting area that I kind of threw in there because some people have been calling this a pumice locality, and it really is not. So let's go first to show you. Remember, this is Austin Hot Springs, its location. Remember, we were right here, and we saw the sill, the Austin sill right there. Bagby is to the southwest, up right here. We are going to visit the Austin Hot Springs first. Okay, so what I've done before I even get started here, let me say that this is private property. I could find, or the ownership I could find, is the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs now has ownership of this area. And I have this little diagram up here to use here when I talk about this spring. And let me point out, at least 50 people have suffered minor to severe burns. Our office was contacted for the last burn victim to get information. What I'm going to tell you now is that the temperature of this hot springs is between 186 to 195 degrees Fahrenheit. You're burned instantaneously at that temperature, but even if you've got a soaker pool off in the river and it happens to have some kind of upwelling of hot water, and they do upwell periodically, we call that an eruption. If you're exposed to even to 140 degree water in 5 seconds, you're burnt. You're going to get burnt, and that is that's what happens here. So there's a stretch along here that's about 100 meters long, so 300 feet, about the size of the length of a football field. These springs or orifices issue from both sides of the river and even in the river itself. And the spring here is probably controlled by a northwest trending fault zone. If we look here at Bagby Hot Springs, and this is closed now due to the fire. This spring it also is, you know, it will scald you if you're in this pool right here, but this water cools enough as it used to get to these bathhouses that and they became soakers. But this one was about 136 degrees Fahrenheit. And this area here is, this spring is also controlled by faults. In this case, they're more north-northwest trending faults. Remember I mentioned that there probably wasn't going to be any geothermal exploration here, but however, the latest modeling of this areas of this central Cascade area that was done in 2016 did indicate or showed, or they modeled or would like you or interpreted that the areas that from Mount Jefferson, which is over here, that is triangled southward, has a high potential for geothermal. There has been one geothermal well that has been spotted here that leads them to believe that. Bagby Hot Springs and Austin Hot Springs, you know, we're only giving them, you know, high or kind of a medium low potential for geothermal resources, and that means power, electrical generation. There is potential, however, for indirect use, and that is or direct use, and that is for heating and so forth. Again, environmental issues and other factors will prohibit any kind of exploration and or development of geothermal resources. So let's go now and take a look at the mercury mineralization. And we're for reference, there's Lake Harriet. We're downriver of it. You can get to the sites via this other road to the lake. And then we'll go later on in the last slide I have, will be at the hydrothermal rock alteration site down here. So the mercury mineralization is really, there was 3 mines. I've got pictured here 2. This the Kiggins and the Nesbitt mine. Kiggins and Nesbitt kind of traded around, and finally these and owned one or both at the same time. And the names here are kind of stuck. This is this shows you the portal here. This is the vein right here in this one, and then they've got scattered equipment here. This used to be an old furnace here, a retort right there. Power was given right here. These were operated in the 1920s to the 1950s. And then over here downstream is the Nesbitt mine. You can see an historical picture here showing the mill site. There's the picture here down the bottom here is in this vicinity. This is an open adit. Adit is a tunnel, and then you can see here the remnants of the old furnace flue. This is where they burned the ore to extract the mercury. This area combined probably produced 22,800 pounds of mercury. At least that's what's been reported. There's some speculation that there's at least oh gosh, maybe 3 or 4 times that amount of mercury that was produced. And this is a little producer compared to others in Oregon. So what we're going to stop to next, oh, I'm sorry, I've got one more slide. So everybody wants to know what's this cinnabar going to look like. So remember, we're going to look at this area right above this adit right here, or this tunnel entrance, and that is the vein. And this vein is made of calcite, which is the different colors right here. And in here, this vermilion, or the red color, is cinnabar, and that's what they after. And you can see cinnabar all scattered all through this particular picture. Now we're going to go down here to the hydrothermal rock alteration, and this will be the one of the final stops. People have been calling this on Facebook and other media as a place to hunt for or confine pumice in along the road, and that's not true. So what you see here is that you see this white, soft, kind of pinkish gray material. It is actually hydrothermal alteration. There used to be a rock there that was an andesite. It was black. I mean, it was hard. If you hit it with a hammer, it would break like regular volcanic rock do out there. But now it has been altered to basically clay, and that is called argillitic alteration. And there are different types of alteration, but this is kind of a pretty complete replacement and obliteration of the rock. This happens to be associated with an andesite intrusion. And I just wanted to point that out. Whenever you see this kind of stuff, that just is like, what happened here? For me as a geologist, and I like to specialize in economic geology, this is what I look for when I go out and map. And then we go out and we look to see if there's any kind of mineralization that can be recognized out there. And frankly, that's where I like to look. So I'm pretty much done. I think I've talked enough, and if there's any questions, be happy to answer them. And again, I want to thank the council for letting me speak, and thanks for listening.
Fabulous. Well, we have one question out of this whole class. You were so thorough, and that was Carol asked, what is feeding the geothermal hot springs at the Bagby and Austin sites?
So we're going to get in the room, and we're going to go to one side. We're going to get in the middle, and then we're going to decide whether we're going to go to the left or the right. So we're going to decide whether the waters that fed these hot springs are deep upwellings from faults and not associated with volcanics, or are we going to say that they are volcanically related and then they upwelled through these faults? So this is how we're going to answer that question. And right now, no one really knows. And Wanamaker in his study was not able to really sort that issue out. That was one of his questions. Okay.
I might have a question that I don't know if it opens a box of worms or not, but looking at the terraces that are flanking the river in the lower river, the floodplain associated with the oldest terrace looks really large compared to the floodplain associated with current day Clackamas River. Was the drainage area a lot different or a much bigger system?
It probably has, speaking from your geomorphic point of view, I think there's two possibilities here that it could explain it. It could be the bedrock itself was one bedrock a little bit more susceptible to erosion. For example, was the Sandy River mudstone, did it kind of inhibit the migration, the natural migration of the river, or was there another part of that ancient river rock that was present? The other thing is what was the rate of downcut, and that influences how much aggregation can happen, or the supply of materials. So I am going to confess that I am not a geomorphologist, and so the river mechanics is not my strong suit. But according to Wappler, it is a combination of downcutting, or the rate of tectonic uplift, the amount of sediment that are available, and then what type of bedrock, and if you want to call it that, or type of ancient river rock it had to cut, and was one more resistant to the natural meandering of the river than the other.
Yeah, we have gonfalers speaking in June, so we'll be able to find out more then.
Great. We have one other question that came through from Dan. Why did the ancient river rocks end 2 million years ago? Why don't they continue to be present?
When the ancestral Columbia River, whenever that time period between the present course of the Columbia River and the ancestral river kind of changed, when the present Columbia River was established, so the whole hydrodynamic setting for the Portland Basin was changed. It also has to do with a lot with tectonics and how much it's been uplifted to the present. So at some time 2 million years ago, there was a major change in the space.
So Susie, I just wanted to mention a couple things to follow up on Clark's marvelous presentation, as I'm kind of a big fan of recommendations for further reading. And for folks that want to dig in a little deeper, the second edition of this classic text, Roadside Geology of Oregon, is available at our public library system. So you can, just like Clark was doing tonight, if you want to take it sometime when you're on a road trip, it's a great way to, especially with a family. I mean, our family, I think, enjoyed pulling this book out once in a while and checking and learning a little bit more in depth. And so the latest edition is by Marley Miller. Again, that's available at the library. And the second one book is, I really like, is In Search of Ancient Oregon by Ellen Morris Bishop. And not only is she an accomplished geologist, but she's an accomplished landscape photographer. So you see in this book, all her photos, she's a classic photographer in that she does it in large format photography, which is almost an extinct art. And so she takes marvelous pictures and just kind of weaves the geology of Oregon together like Sheila and Clark have done over the past couple of weeks. So I suggest checking those out through our library if you want.
I'd also recommend that you check out the books, Oregon Geology by Bill Orr and Elizabeth Orr. There's a new edition out. He is it's the quintessential book for an overview of Oregon geology.
All right, is that it for questions, Susie? If there's anyone else who has a question that they'd like to unmute themselves for, we can offer up some time for some last questions. Okay. Probably everyone's reeling from thinking in the time frame of hundreds of thousands of years to millions of years. I think that's a very good practice for stimulating the mind. So thank you so much, Clark. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Before everyone leaves, I have a couple of wrap-up announcements to make real quick. Our next session will be on April 20th. It's the third geology session with presenters Charlie Hammond and Brent Black from Cornforth Consultants. They're presenting about geological hazards from rockfalls and landslides to seismic issues. So you can use the same Zoom link as you used today. You're already registered for the event, and we'll send a reminder email the day before. We'll also send an email out to everyone, a thank you for joining us, and it'll have a link to the recording of the presentation. And then it'll also have more information about getting those continuing education units or the professional development hours from Clackamas Community College. So round of applause to Clark Niewendorp. Thank you so much. We also want to thank our gold sponsor, Clackamas Water Environment Services, and our bronze sponsors, Clackamas River Water Providers and the Geological Society of the Oregon Country, of which Clark is the current president. All of these folks are helping us keep this conference free for everyone So please consider supporting this if you are able. And then thanks again for joining us on the journey down the Clackamas.